My mother didn't wish me a happy birthday. Instead, she slid a $500,000 check across the table, my grandfather's gift to me, like it was a ransom. "Sign it over to your brother," she said coldly, "or you're not leaving this house." I didn't touch the pen. My father walked to the front door and locked it. Then he turned his phone toward me. On the screen was a photo of our porch, taken from a black car parked outside. "The loan sharks are here," he said quietly. "Clara, you pay Brandon's debt or they come inside." I glanced at the locked door, then back at my parents. Panic wasn't useful right now. In my job, when something in the numbers doesn't make sense, you don't panic, you investigate. And right now, the problem sat in the middle of the table. A cheap cupcake from the grocery store with a single candle stuck in it. For a moment, I wasn't 29 anymore. I was 10 again, sitting at this same table, squeezing my eyes shut while making a birthday wish. Back then, I wished my parents would look at me the way they looked at Brandon. I wished that, just once, I wouldn't feel invisible, not just the future bank account or retirement plan, but their daughter. Now I looked at my mother gripping the check so tightly her knuckles were white. My father kept glancing nervously toward the window, where the black car waited. They weren't celebrating my birthday. They were using it to save their son. In that moment, I imagined leaning forward and blowing out that little candle from years ago. But instead of birthday smoke, it smelled like something burning, like a bridge. The daughter inside me disappeared in that chair. The forensic auditor took her place. I stayed calm. No tears. No begging. Fear makes people careless. I needed to be the smartest person in the room. "If I sign this check," I said quietly, "Brandon will be dead by morning." My mother blinked. "What are you talking about?" "It's money. It saves him." "No," I replied. "It doesn't. Any transfer over $10,000 triggers a bank report. $500,000 will freeze the account immediately. The bank will hold it for at least 7 days for an anti-money laundering review." My father's face went pale. "The sharks won't wait 7 days," I continued. "And if the IRS sees Brandon suddenly receiving $500,000 with no record of income, they'll seize it for taxes before he can even touch it." My father wiped sweat from his forehead. "So, what do we do?" he asked. "We can't wait." I paused, then said the first lie of the night. "We have to hide the asset. If those men check your records and see you own this house, they'll know you have equity. They'll take the money and then force you to sign over the house anyway." I watched my father carefully. The fear in his eyes shifted into something else.
Greed.
"How do we stop that?" he asked quickly. "We transfer the house into a blind trust tonight," I said. "An anonymous LLC. It will look like a corporate purchase. The money moves instantly as part of the deal, avoiding the personal account hold. They search your name, you own nothing. The debt gets paid, and the house stays protected until everything settles down." It was mostly nonsense, just enough financial jargon to sound convincing. They exchanged a glance. They believed me. They never really knew what I did for a living. They only knew it had something to do with money. "Do it," my mother said, pushing the laptop toward me. "Fix this." I opened the computer slowly. The blue screen lit my face. But I wasn't saving them. I was burying them. My father rushed out of the room to grab his own laptop, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. He thought he was helping dig them out of trouble. He had no idea he was bringing me the shovel. The room went quiet. My mother sat across from me, breathing hard, convinced she had finally forced me to obey. She thought she was looking at her daughter, but she wasn't. She was looking at a creditor. I glanced around the dining room while we waited. It was beautiful. Marble floors from Italy, custom wood paneling, a sparkling crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my first car. I knew exactly how much everything cost, because I knew where the money came from. It didn't come from my father's job. It came from my broken leg. When I was 18, a semi-truck ran a red light and smashed into my car. I spent 3 months learning how to walk again. The insurance settlement was $185,000. Pain and suffering, they called it. I remember the day the check arrived. My mother held my hand and told me I was too young to manage that much money. She promised they would invest it safely for my future, for a house or a family someday. I believed her. I was 18, injured, and they were my parents. 2 months later, Brandon crashed his truck through the front window of a liquor store while drunk. His blood alcohol level was almost 3 times the legal limit. It should have been prison. But suddenly my parents had enough money to hire the best criminal defense lawyer in the state. Brandon walked away with probation. His record was wiped clean. And when I asked about my investment account the next year, my mother smiled and said the market had crashed. She lied without blinking. Back then, I believed her. Now I knew the truth. 3 years ago, when I earned my certification, I finally followed the money. I traced every transfer. That's when I discovered the truth. My parents had drained the $185,000 settlement for my accident. The money meant for my recovery, my future, had been used to buy Brandon's freedom. They took the payment for my broken leg and used it to clean up their golden child's mistakes. And that wasn't the end of it. While they were renovating this house, installing marble floors and building a new wing, I was living in a tiny basement apartment that smelled like mold and cat litter. I survived on instant noodles and worked double shifts just to afford my textbooks. My college fund had mysteriously disappeared. Later, I learned why. It had gone to cover Brandon's gambling debts in Las Vegas. They lived in comfort, surrounded by luxury paid for with my pain, while I struggled just to stay afloat. I looked at my mother now. She was nervously smoothing the tablecloth, glancing toward the door, waiting for my father to return. She had no idea that every expensive thing in this room, the marble floor, the chandelier, the furniture she loved so much, had already been paid for by me. Taking this house wouldn't be theft. It wouldn't even be a scam. It would simply be repayment, a debt that had been collecting interest for 11 years. "You're doing the right thing, Clara," my mother said, mistaking my silence for hesitation. "Family helps family." "I know," I replied calmly. "That's exactly what I'm doing." I was helping the only family member who still mattered, myself. Just then, my father rushed back into the dining room, clutching his laptop like a shield. He pushed aside a centerpiece of dried flowers, something that probably cost $500, and set the computer on the table. He opened it quickly, his eyes flicking between the screen and the window where the imaginary black car waited. He typed in his password, Brandon 888. Of course. The transfer page I had prepared was already on the screen. My father's finger hovered over the trackpad. He was sweating now. A bead of perspiration slid down his temple and disappeared into his collar. "I don't know, Linda," he muttered nervously. "Transferring the house, this feels extreme. What if the trust never gives it back? We should have a lawyer look at this." "We don't have time for lawyers," my mother snapped. "Look at the clock. Look outside." "I know, but..." He turned toward me then, suspicion creeping into his expression. "Why are you helping us, Clara?" he asked. "You never help anyone. You guard every dollar you make. Why the sudden change?" He wasn't strong, but he wasn't completely foolish either. Some part of him sensed the trap, even if he couldn't see it yet. I opened my mouth, ready to drown him in another wave of financial jargon about emergency liquidity and asset protection. But my mother didn't let me speak. Her patience snapped. The mask of the worried parent disappeared instantly. She lunged across the table and grabbed my wrist. Her nails dug into my skin. "She's helping because she doesn't have a choice," she hissed, her face inches from mine. "Listen carefully, Clara. You're going to guide your father through this transfer. Right now." "Or what?" I asked quietly. "You'll ground me?" Her eyes narrowed. "Or I call the police," she said coldly. "I tell them my daughter is having a psychotic breakdown. I say you're threatening to hurt yourself. I'll mention those antidepressants you took in college. I'll tell them you're unstable and dangerous." The room suddenly felt much colder. "You wouldn't," I said softly. But deep down, I knew she would. "I'll file for an emergency conservatorship in the morning," she whispered. "I'll tell the court you're not mentally fit to handle your own finances." She leaned even closer. "Think about it, Clara. A forensic auditor with a record of mental instability. A psychiatric hold on your file. You'd lose your license, your security clearance, your entire career." Her smile was thin and cruel. "I will destroy everything you've built just to save your brother." I stared at her. really stared. For years, I had convinced myself my parents were simply flawed, that they loved me in their own broken way. But looking into her eyes now, I finally understood. There was no love there. Not even affection. Only calculation. To her, I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. She was willing to ruin my life, strip away my freedom and my career, just to keep Brandon's money flowing. In that moment, the last tiny piece of guilt I had about taking their house disappeared. It turned to ash. I didn't pull my wrist away. I didn't flinch. Instead, a slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile, just a slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter watching the trap snap shut. "You're right, Mom," I said calmly. "Family comes first. Let's finish this." I turned to my father. "Open the browser." I booked an emergency online notary appointment using a corporate merger code. The notary is already waiting in the lobby. We have 10 minutes before the slot expires. My mother let go of my wrist, looking satisfied. She thought she had scared me into obedience. She thought she had won. She had no idea she had just signed her own eviction notice. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dim dining room, casting pale light across the marble table. 7:42 p.m., I said, glancing at the clock. We have 18 minutes. I called in a favor with a corporate notary service I use for acquisitions. I continued, typing quickly. If we miss this window, the deal dies, and Brandon is on his own. It was a lie. There was no special merger code. Just a normal online notary service anyone could book for a small fee. But my parents didn't know that. All they knew was panic. "What do we do?" my father asked nervously. "Sit here," I said, turning the laptop toward him. "I've prepared a quitclaim deed. We're transferring the property into a holding company called Veritas Holdings, LLC. My mother squinted at the screen. "Who owns that?" "It's a blind trust," I replied confidently. "It protects the asset. If those men check property records tomorrow, they'll see the house was sold to a corporation. You'll look broke on paper." "And the taxes?" my father asked, clearly terrified of the IRS. "That's the advantage," I said smoothly. "If I simply give you the check, it counts as a gift and triggers massive taxes. But if we structure it as a corporate asset exchange, it bypasses that threshold entirely." They nodded. They didn't really understand what I was saying, but they wanted to believe it. Greed makes people easy to fool. A moment later, the video call connected. A woman in a blazer appeared on the screen. "Good evening," she said. "I'm here to notarize a deed transfer." "Yes," I said. "My clients are ready." My father hesitated. His hand hovered over the trackpad. "Clara, this trust gives the house back to us in 30 days, right? After the debt is paid." I looked straight into his eyes. "The contract follows the money, Dad. Once the debt is settled, the asset balances out." Technically, that was true. The debt was the money they stole from me. The balance was the house. My father looked at me, then nervously toward the window where he imagined dangerous men waiting outside. Fear clouded his judgment. They were so focused on imaginary threats that they never saw the real danger sitting at the table with them. "Sign it," my mother snapped. My father clicked. Signature accepted. My mother signed next. Accepted. The notary added her seal. "It's complete," she said. My father let out a long breath. "The house is safe." "Yes," I replied, closing the laptop. "It is now." My mother held out her hand. "Give me the check." I picked up the $500,000 check, the bait, and walked to the shredder. My grandfather used to say, "Never write a check your integrity can't cash." I switched the machine on and fed the check into the blades. The paper disappeared with a loud mechanical crunch. The silence afterward was heavy. My father lunged toward me in rage. I calmly raised my phone. "I'm live streaming," I said. "Touch me, and the recording goes straight to the police." He froze instantly. "You lied," my mother whispered. "You said the trust would return the house." "I said the contract follows the money," I replied quietly. And it did. Veritas Holdings belongs to me. The name comes from Latin. It means truth. The house repays the money you stole from my accident settlement, I continued, plus 11 years of interest. The debt is now settled. We'll sue you, my father shouted. Please do, I said calmly. Explain to a judge how you signed a deed transfer to hide assets and avoid taxes. Silence filled the room. You can fight the eviction if you want, I added, walking toward the door. But if you're not out by noon tomorrow, the forensic audit goes to the IRS and the district attorney. Then I left. I left them sitting there, small, frightened, and trapped in the house they no longer owned. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. My brother Brandon was breaking into my old apartment with a tire iron, looking for money that wasn't there. I watched him through the security camera. Smile. I whispered through the app, "You're on camera." He kept searching an empty air vent when the police arrived. 30 days later, my parents were living in a cheap motel. The house was sold. The money was safe. My grandfather later slid another check across his desk. This one was also $500,000. This time, he said quietly, "It's for your own firm." My hand didn't shake when I took it. Some bridges have to burn so the demons can't follow. And if you've ever escaped a toxic family, remember one thing. You're not alone.